seriously. This is a great theme. I love it. Thanks for inviting us to talk on behalf of Cisco about the edge. Let me start by saying one thing. I was very impressed with MVP's speech. You have something in common with Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. What were the opening lines of Living on the Edge? There's something wrong with the world today. And I think you talked about how technology can be a great equalizer, how technology can be used to improve the world that we live in today. And today I'm going to be talking to you about that, how technology can help us improve, take us to the edge around living, working, playing, and learning. And it's about the edge, so it's about pushing us beyond into our comfort zone or out of our comfort zone in order to really make a difference to citizens, lives of people, the people of the Philippines. So let me start by saying, how could we do this? Well, let me start by just saying that. So we're going to make sure the clicker works, but can we change the way we live? And when we talk about living, technology has helped reduce infant mortality. This is a point that you made earlier, sir. Technology can help us also change the way we live on this planet from a sustainability standpoint. Now, you may be wondering how, so let me just give you some thoughts on how.
We can do things with technology today that we couldn't have dreamt about 8 years ago. This technology revolution is vital for the transition to a circular economy. And I think that's why we feel the time is now. That's why we feel there is so much momentum out there in the world. There is huge momentum because that opportunity is sitting there waiting to happen.
Technology is a powerful tool, but we can't rely on technology alone. It's also the human skills and expertise, guided by compassion, that will enable us to reach our goals. You, every single one of you, can be a global problem solver because no one knows the issues in your community and your lives better than you know. Explore, be curious. Anyone can be a bridge to new possibilities, but the question is, what's your inspiration? And what bridges can we build together?
So the question is, what's your inspiration? Now, there are many of us in the world and in Philippines. So your inspiration may be different, but the choices that we make are our own. So we can actually help you make the bridge to what's possible. With PLDT, I'm sure those are the ambitions that MVP has stated as well. So I was very excited to hear that. Let's take one example of how Cisco is taking something that's important to us and translating that to something real in the economy. Now, I don't know if many of you have seen this movie Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio. I can see some nods out there. This movie, if you have seen it, you can see how conflict diamonds can really be a divisive force for families and for children in developing countries like the Congo and Rwanda. It's a very painful situation. Now, we've taken steps at Cisco to use our technology to ensure that every single part of our supply chain is free from conflict minerals. 25% of all the world's electronics have metal in it that comes from small developers or small miners in Congo and in Rwanda and in other parts of the world. And we've used blockchain technology to ensure that none of that enters our supply chain. So this is an example of how technology can be used to change lives. And that's something that I would like you to think about on how all of you can do something in your own way And what's your inspiration? That's the question we keep asking. What's your inspiration? So that's something about life, changing the way we live and bringing you to the edge of what's important in the way you live. What about the way we work? Now, work is changing, and I want to show you a video of how things might look like even in the near future.
Even if we share the same goals, we take different roads to get there. And wherever you are in your journey, Cisco and Ford are making it easier for you to collaborate from the driver's seat. Join my upcoming meeting. Now you can join WebEx meetings from your car.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Brett. So you can keep the ideas flowing, even if traffic tries to slow you down.
Sarah, what do you think?
As usual, got a million ideas.
And wherever your day takes you, you'll be ready to share them.
That sounds great.
Introducing Cisco WebEx meetings, available on Ford Sync 3 with Uplink. Now you can stay productive wherever your journey takes you.
Okay, who's going to do this in Metro Manila? Okay, well, do it safely, whatever you do. The next one is, we've talked about live, we talked about work. What about play? So we're here in the Marriott right now. I understand there's a golf course very nearby. Is that right? Okay, there's a golf course nearby. So what we've been doing is, can we change the way in which, can we improve things in the way in which we play? Just very recently, a couple of weeks ago, the US Open, in the US, obviously, the US Open was just completed, and Cisco had partnered with the US Open, the US Golfing Association, USGA, to come up with analytics behind the game itself. Now, up until 2017, I was doing some research on this, you couldn't attend a golfing event and actually bring your mobile phone to the golfing event. You had to actually leave leave your mobile phone at the door. So what we've done is we actually were able to change that, and we were able to implement technology using Wi-Fi 6 to enable spectators to come into the golfing arena and with very dense networks provide on-demand, real-time, OTT-curated video, but also analytics around that. So I'm clicking, but nothing's happening. And this is what we did. So we actually provided not just real-time video, but also analytics around the experience. So when you're actually on the golf course, you can actually take part in what the players are seeing and what they are doing in order to play at the best of their game. So this is an example, just one example of changing the way we play. So let me jump to learn. So changing the way we learn. Now, I'm sure most of us in this room have been privileged enough to have an education. But have you really thought about how useful that education was? Now, I want to do a poll. I can't see you very well, but I'll try my best. I want to do a poll in here and ask you if you can raise your hand if you think you can draw. Okay, can you draw? Raise your hand. All right, that's what I love about the Philippines. Being bold and very creative and happy. Okay, do you consider yourself, keep those hands up by the way. If you can draw, I know some of you, so I'm going to come by you later. If you can draw and you think you're creative, if you think you can draw and you think you're creative, keep your hand up. Come on, what is this? Yeah, okay, those guys in the back, because I can't see your face. All right, so this is the thing about learning. Okay, I want you to think about it. It's counterintuitive. In 1965, George Land, who was a researcher at NASA, did a study of creativity. And he polled 1,600 students, 1,600 students. And he set a set of questions to ask them to test how creative they were. And when they were 4 or 5 years old, 98% of those children tested as creative geniuses. Okay? Creative genius, meaning they could be the most incredible inventors in the world. They took the same 1,600 kids, as in they didn't take a new bunch of kids, but he followed the same 1,600 kids as they went through their education system. And they measured them again when they were 10 years old. Any ideas on what the number could be? Close. Clicking. All right. 30%. Okay? So we now have only 1 in 3 students that are actually creative geniuses. And then he measured them again at the age of 15, and that number dropped to 12. Now, let's go back to those names that, let's raise your hand. How many of you thought you were creative? Okay, that sounds about right, actually. I guess there's about 1,000, maybe 800 people in here, is that right? Something like that? So the number that were tested to be creative geniuses, 2%. That means there's 20 people in this room. I'm assuming you're all adults, by the way. 20 people in this room are creative geniuses. Now, we need to change the way we learn, because if the education system takes it out of you, we need to provide a different education system for our kids so they can continue to be scientists, explorers, really pushing the boundaries of literature and science and poetry, etc., and arts. Because currently, technology is not really helping the education institution in producing creative geniuses. And we need more of them in the world, because the world is getting harder to live in. So let me jump now to, okay, that's very conceptual, but let me jump now to how we think about how we're going to be trying to solve these problems. One is, we're trying to connect any user to any device on any network to any application. That's how we think about bridging very lofty goals to actually creating real creative people, but also improving the way we live, work, and play and learn. So it's a multi-domain architecture. And this requires a lot of success factors. Okay? 5, actually, I would argue. You need 5 edges. Okay? So those of you out there, either with PLDT or the partner ecosystem or whoever is out there, this is the message to all of you. You need 5 edges. The first one is, obviously, you need a technology edge. You have to have intellectual property that can actually give you a differentiation versus your competitor. Secondly, you need an edge in security. And I was happy to see so many videos out there, also from our competitors, talking about security, because security is very critical for the future. Thirdly, we need an edge around analytics. And I see here I have analytics. This is the one slide I made myself, by the way. It says analytics and analytics. It should be saying analytics and partnerships. So this is my slide, thanks. So the third one is around analytics. The fourth is on partnerships. And then the 5th is on talent. So that's what the 5th should be. 5th is talent. Okay? Apologies for the slide, but that was mine. So let me start with technology. If I was to pick one key technology to focus on, one, and there's so many out there, I would pick software-defined wide area networking. Now, why would I pick that? Because currently we're in a situation where we are seeing everything moving into the cloud. And if you ask anyone at Cisco or any of our customers or partners, we would tell them, move to the cloud. Whether it's Microsoft or AWS, or if it's Google Cloud or anyone out there, I think, if they've got good applications and good service value, you got to move your applications to the cloud. But you realize there is always going to be a lot of your applications and workload on your own premises as well. So you're going to have multiple clouds, public clouds, so that's the multi-cloud element. You're also going to have a public and a private cloud, which is what we call hybrid cloud. So you're operating in a hybrid and a multi-cloud environment. You absolutely need to provide a link back into the aggregation network, into the branch network, and onto the campus. Now, in order to enable data to flow throughout your enterprise architecture, you absolutely need to have software-defined WAN. Now, this is scary for a lot of telcos because it can potentially cannibalize your MPLS revenues. But I'm excited to see PLDT embarking on a bold vision to kind of deploy software-defined WAN because you realize the value that SD-WAN can provide to your customers. Customers will get a cost saving, but they will also get enhanced security, enhanced visibility, and most importantly, because software-defined WAN segregates the actual hardware from the policy control, we will be able to also provide software-defined access to across the entire architecture, right from the campus through to the cloud. So software-defined WAN is absolutely key, and it is absolutely key for Cisco. And I'm glad to see that it's key in the Philippines as well. The second part around the edge is on cybersecurity. Now, we're seeing threats everywhere, and everyone is seeing this. Firewall, obviously, needs to be fortified. We need to be able to detect threats everywhere, but we also need to be able to contain and isolate the threats in a segmented approach. Now, we know this, but let's think about what it really means in a large enterprise. And to me, the best example, I have to say this, because I work for Cisco, is actually in Cisco itself, where we use all of our own cybersecurity technology on our own staff and with our own offices and in our own manufacturing facilities. So we have layered security through from leveraging firewall, umbrella, but also leveraging advanced malware protection at the endpoint, Stealth Watch, which is packet level inspection using flow telemetry, and also incorporating multi-factor authentication through Duo. We've made significant acquisitions in this space, and we are now the single largest cybersecurity vendor in the world with a combined market share of a grand total of 7%. So it's a very fragmented market, okay? Now, I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in this space, because if you go to the most secure locations in the world, like, for example, the US military, or any military for that matter, you find a very tighter, closed ecosystem. So we're starting to see a lot of consolidation in the cybersecurity landscape, but it needs to be beyond the firewall. The firewall is just one element of cybersecurity. Most attacks happen within the four walls of the building. And there's no more four walls of the building anymore, as we know, because we saw the lady in the Ford, right, doing WebEx meetings on the road. There's no four walls anymore in the way we work. The next one is on data. There are 2.5 quintillion, so 2.5 million exabytes of data being generated every single day. There's a data deluge. And most of the data is actually being generated in the last 2 years, as we know. And if you were to stack up all of this data in CD-ROMs, like they used to in the old days, you'd get 4 times the height of the Eiffel Tower every day. You know? And 90% of it is generated in the last 2 years. So what we need is an edge in analytics. Now, I don't know how many of you have that edge. I know we're still looking for it. We're trying to find people that have that edge. Hard to find, but this is a key success factor to compete in the digital age. The next one is partnerships, the fourth one on my list. And on partnerships, it's important to, if you can help me with the click, I did click it once. On partnerships, it's important to understand that there's actually no boundary to partnerships. So what is potentially has once been your competitor could be your partner in the future. So one thing I've been extremely happy about by working at Cisco is that I see how we embrace partnerships. Our partnership model is probably one of the best in the world. Anyone that I've come across, whether it's a startup, VC-funded startup with maybe 3 people, right the way through to a large company with 200,000 employees, we have some of the best partnership programs. And we also do make a lot of acquisitions. We made 230 acquisitions in the last 20 years. So as we start to innovate and expand the edge of the borders of the business, we do that with our partners. And lastly, let me talk about talent. So the last edge, and I would argue the most important one, is around talent. And these are 6 job descriptions, if you like, or job types that are important for us to consider as we start to bridge the skills gap. We need a lot more support on enterprise architects. We need to find more qualified cybersecurity and application developers, software developers. We also need people that are skilled in IoT and big data analytics. Service provider infrastructure. It's getting a lot more complicated. Getting the engineers in there is really tough. And data center computing. Now, why do we need those skills? It's because a lot of the jobs are going to be displaced. So we've done a study, and I want to leave you with this study. It's online. We did this with Oxford Economics. And we did a study of the 280 million workers, 275 million workers in Southeast Asia. And we found that 28 million of those workers will move jobs. They will move from what they were currently doing to what is required in the future. And some of them may make it, and some of them won't. But 28 million of those jobs will change. So we did this analysis, and we mapped out through 7 iterative loops in the analytical model which jobs could move where. So we found, for example, certain jobs could move to other ones, and others couldn't. So for example, if you were a president of Cisco in Southeast Asia, for example, you would never be able to make it as a model in the mail modeling industry. Those kind of transitions don't actually work, okay? No matter how much you'd like to, they don't happen. But we found that certain jobs do migrate. So for example, if you are in the trucking industry or you're in retail, you can move into manufacturing jobs. If you're, for example, used to working with screens, and you're used to working with screens, you can actually move into a controller job in a manufacturing plant because you're actually able to look at the screens and understand the data. But we found that in Philippines, 10% of the jobs would move. 4.5 million workers would be displaced. That's a lot. And when you double click on that, the majority of those will be displaced in agriculture because there's a lot of agricultural activity in the Philippines. And if you look at what people actually do, they're actually doing a lot of lifting and shifting, a lot of moving work, right? We went down to the activity level. They're not actually doing a lot of value-added work. So that work is going to get taken over by machines. So it's up to us to reskill and train the talent so they can move into other jobs. And that's the key. So anyone that wants to know more about this, please do just Google Cisco, Oxford Economics, jobs. Just type in those 3 words, or Cisco, jobs, Oxford Economics, 4 words, and you'll find this study. All the data is in there. It's like 80 pages, and you know exactly which jobs are going to be leaving for which industry and when by 2028. So let me close off by saying this is an exciting time. It's a very exciting time, not just for us, but in particular also for our children. We have, when we commit to lifelong learning, we will be able to make a difference to society. This is a hard one to read, but what you have to imagine is just look at the blue part. The blue part shows you how much time any one of us spends time in formal learning. Okay? So when you're at 0 to 5, pretty much you don't do anything. Okay? Unless maybe if we're in Singapore, but okay, just kidding. When you're in kindergarten, you spend about 9% of your time in sort of formal learning. When you get to grades 1 to 12, you're spending a lot in classrooms. When you go to university, undergraduate, graduate, you do a lot more you do some in classroom, but you do a lot outside of the classroom. And then when you get into the work life, you don't spend any time really training. And so it's up to us if we want to really make a difference and really transition into the new knowledge economy for us to commit ourselves to more learning and more on-the-job learning, but also more formal learning. So it's an exciting time for all of us. And I'm really excited to be, I have 3 boys, I have 3 kids, all of them love technology. They see tremendous opportunities in the world ahead. And it leaves me with a very good sense that We are, entrusting a generation with some of the problems that are existing in the world today that would be solved already by the time they get older. And the way we're doing this through our work is by connecting any user on any device to any network on any application. Thank you very much.